The lecture hall of the Interstellar Academy of Tactical Sciences smelled like ozone and something faintly floral, a scent pumped through ventilation systems designed to calm species with anxiety-prone nervous systems. It did nothing for Lyra Vera. She sat in the second-to-last row, which was already an act of social warfare. Behind her was empty space. No alien student wanted to sit behind a human. Not because of fear, exactly. More like the instinct a small creature feels when it realizes it has accidentally placed its back to a predator. Lyra didn't mind. She set her equipment case on the desk with a soft, deliberate clunk. Around her, the other cadets rustled and chittered in their own languages before the universal translator earpieces smoothed everything into comprehensible syllables. The class was a mosaic of the galaxy's finest military traditions. Joe, a four-armed veteran whose people had mastered plasma artillery for 3 centuries. Me, a Silurian with bioluminescent skin who could interface directly with targeting computers through her fingertips. New York, a towering Grethkai whose exoskeleton made him essentially a walking tank. Di and Hai, twin Karathi whose hive-linked minds made them devastating tactical coordinators. And Wa, a small, ancient-looking Quellan who said little but whose species had fought 17 intergalactic wars and won every single one. Then there was Lyra. Human. Deathworld cadet. And armed with what looked, by galactic standards, like a museum piece. Professor Kale Veyron entered without ceremony, his 4 iridescent wings folded tight against his back, his elongated fingers already pulling up holographic slides. He was Ethosi, a species that had achieved spaceflight before humanity had invented writing, and he wore his authority the way most beings wore skin, naturally, without thinking about it. Today, he announced, we conduct the weapons assessment protocol. Each cadet will present their primary field weapon for biometric analysis, compatibility scoring, and tactical classification. He gestured toward the scanning arch at the front of the room. A sleek column of shimmering light, it could assess any weapon in under 4 seconds and project a full combat profile to the room's main display. Joe went first. His plasma repeater drew a low murmur of appreciation. The scanner hummed, and the display read, Tier 3, Advanced Suppression Unit. Tactical rating, 87/100. Respectful applause from the class. Me's neural-linked sniper interface pulled a Tier 4, Precision Elimination Platform. Tactical rating, 91/100. Even Professor Veyron nodded. New York's integrated exocannon scored Tier 3, Heavy Assault System. Di and Hai's coordinated dual-pulse weapons registered as a Tier 4, Synchronized Tactical Array when used together, which was always. We placed a device so small it looked like a pen onto the scanner bed. The display took longer than usual. Then, Tier 5, classified. Tactical rating, redacted. We retrieved it without expression. Nobody asked questions. Then it was Lyra's turn. She walked to the front of the room, case in hand, and lifted it onto the scanning platform. When she clicked the latches open, the sound was almost comically old-fashioned, actual metal latches, actual hinge springs. The foam-lined interior revealed a rifle. Long, heavy-barreled. Bolt action. The kind of weapon that required a living hand to chamber each round. The snickering started with Di. Or maybe Hai. Hard to tell with hive minds. Is that? Joe paused, checking his translator earpiece as if it had made an error. Manual? Entirely manual? It's a rifle, Lyra said. She didn't elaborate. What is its fire rate? Me asked, genuinely curious rather than cruel. Depends how fast I work the bolt. The laughter was polite in the way that galactic society had evolved to be. No one wanted to be rude to a human, exactly, but the absurdity was simply too great. Even Professor Veyron's expression shifted towards something between academic interest and concern. Cadet Vera, he said carefully. The assessment requires a functional weapon. This appears to be functional, Lyra said. She lifted the rifle, set it on the scanner bed, and stepped back. The arch hummed. 1 second. 2. The usual assessment took 4. At 6 seconds, Professor Veyron frowned. His wings twitched, an ethosy tell for unease. At 9 seconds, the scanner's hum dropped in pitch, like something heavy settling. At 12 seconds, the display flickered. Then it spoke. Not in text. In voice, the scanner's emergency audio output, reserved for anomalous findings that required immediate verbal notification. Classification complete. Weapon designation, Human Kinetic Propulsion System, Mark 7, Long-Range Variant. Tactical tier, undefined. Initiating secondary analysis protocol. The room was silent. Another 4 seconds. Secondary analysis complete. Biological compatibility, single species. Species, Homo sapiens, death world origin, Sol 3. Operator classification, Alpha Predator. Tactical rating, context dependent. Maximum observed effective range, 2,300 meters. Lethality index, absolute at confirmed range. Threat assessment, extreme. No one laughed now. Professor Veyron stared at the display for a long moment. Then he looked at Lyra. Then at the rifle. Then at the display again, as if hoping the numbers had changed. 2,300 meters, Me said softly. Her bioluminescence had gone pale. That's past the horizon on most terrain. It's a confirmed kill distance, Lyra said. Not a theoretical one. By you? New York asked. By humans. As a species. She paused. I've only done 1,800. We made a sound. It might have been a laugh. It was the first sound we had made all class. Professor Veyron cleared his throat. He pulled up the scanner's extended report on his personal display, reading quietly. His wings, usually so composed, shifted in what Lyra had learned to recognize as ethosy discomfort. The system is flagging an anomaly, he said finally. The weapon requires no power cell. No targeting AI. No neural link, no biometric calibration, no atmospheric compensation array. Correct, Lyra said. Then how does it? The operator compensates. She reached out and lifted the rifle from the scanner bed, settling the stock against her shoulder in one practiced motion. Wind speed. Humidity. Elevation. Bullet drop over distance. Spin drift. Coriolis effect. She lowered it again. You do the math in your head, or you miss. The class absorbed this. Joe, who had 3 centuries of plasma artillery tradition in his blood, leaned forward. Your species does this manually? Without computational assistance? We invented it that way. We've had a few centuries to get good at it. But why? Me asked. Why not upgrade? Lyra tilted her head. It was a fair question. She thought about how to answer it honestly. Because the rifle doesn't break when the power grid goes down, she said. It doesn't stop working when someone jams your frequencies. It doesn't need calibration after a hard landing. It doesn't run out of charge during an 18-hour overwatch. She set the weapon down gently. And because we're the targeting computer. That's not a limitation. That's redundancy. Professor Veyron was quiet for a long time. He looked at the display, Alpha Predator still glowing in amber letters, and then at his class, some of the finest young tactical minds in the known galaxy, and finally at the human cadet who had walked in carrying what they'd all assumed was a joke. Miss Vera, he said at last, and there was something different in his voice now. Not condescension. Not confusion. Something closer to recalibration. Tell me. At 1,800 meters, what were the conditions? Crosswind, 11 kilometers per hour. Rain. Partial fog. She paused. Moving target. Silence. Then was spoke for the first time all semester. How long, the ancient Quellen said, in a voice like dry leaves, have humans been doing this? Lyra considered the question seriously. Hunting at range? About 500,000 years, give or take, if you count thrown weapons. She glanced at the rifle. This specific format, couple hundred years. Long enough. One nodded very slowly. Professor Veyron closed his display. He looked at his class, at Joe and me in New York and Dai and Hai and Wa, and then back at the display where the scanner's amber text still glowed against the dark. Operator classification, Alpha Predator. I will be revising the curriculum, he said quietly. Effective next session, we will be adding a unit on analog redundancy systems. He folded his hands. And on the history of human ranged engagement. His eyes found Lyra. Cadet Vera. I would ask that you consider guest lecturing. Lyra picked up her rifle, clicked the case closed, and settled it under her arm. Sure, she said. She walked back to her seat, the second to last row, the row no alien cadet sat behind, and sat down. Around her, the room stayed very, very quiet. Not out of discomfort anymore. Out of respect. The scanner's report was later archived in the Academy's records under a new classification header it had never needed before, Death World Operator, do not underestimate. It became a standard footnote in every tactical assessment course taught thereafter. Humans, it turned out, had been the galaxy's apex predators for a very long time. They just hadn't needed anyone else to notice.